And here we go.
That's right, Joe. What's up, everybody? And welcome to the Lone Gunman Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Clark, along with me, Joe Borelli. And with us today, two very special guests, 2 of 5 of JFK Chokeholds authors are with us today to talk about some files and some letters and a whole lot of other things. They are Andrew Iler and Mark Adamczyk. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, sir.
Yes, sir.
I said it just like how Eugenio calls you. So if it's wrong, I blame you.
No, you said it better than Jim does. No, I'm kidding. No, that was great. That was great. It's a damn Zick, but a damn chick is great too.
Yeah, that combination of consonants there at the end is brutal.
Yep.
But I feel like I would have done a better job than Joe. So
yes, my mispronunciation is a running joke on the podcast.
Yes. The reason we're here today, folks, is because Mark wrote a very interesting letter to Representative Anna Paulina Luna, the goddess, as we call her around these parts, fellas, for obvious reasons. But I thought the letter, which was published over at kennedysandking.com, and we're going to put the link in the description so you can go check it out yourself, was worthy of some more discussion, and especially worthy of attention from the JFK research community. So that is why we're here today, and we're going to take it a little further and dig into things. And, for a lot of the lay people in the community, not so nerdy like we are, some of this stuff can be very confusing and daunting and, kind of above people's pay grades when it comes to try to parse out and understand how all this works. So hopefully we're here today to dumb it down for some people and explain exactly what is going on, what should be going on, and hopefully what will be going on. So on that note, Joe, if you want to kick us off and get us going here with the fellas. And again, thanks guys for joining us.
Yep. Thank you very much. And before we start, I thought we'd start off on a light note. Andrew, how was your trip to the other side of the pond, Dealey Plaza, UK? Was it Scotland or Northern England?
And did you meet your doppelganger?
Who's that?
Jarvis Cocker from the band Pulp.
That's the first time I've heard that one. No,
do you know who I'm talking about?
I haven't seen a photo, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, you need to Google.
Yeah, no, it was in Warwickshire, England, which is about an hour north of London, and it was fantastic. It was an amazing venue, a great bunch of speakers, and it was really quite enlightening being there. And I do have to say it was a little bit different than some of my experiences in Dallas. The UK research community, it seems to be a little more collegial and supportive of even views that maybe not everyone agrees on. But they gave me a nice little spot on Saturday to present about the final determinations. It was really well received. I think they're just starting to publish some of the presentations on YouTube this week. So I know Paul Blow did a presentation on the Pepe letters and on prior plots, and that's up on YouTube now on Dealey Plaza UK. It was a fantastic experience. Like everyone was really welcoming there. And again, the response was fantastic. It was a good opportunity too. I put together a fairly lengthy PowerPoint to go along with my presentation, and there was a lot of interest. I got to meet Malcolm Blunt and Bart Camp and Johnny Cairns and Neil Safety put on the event. He did an amazing job with both the venue and keeping things moving. It was 1000% positive experience.
Awesome.
And did you get to speak with Malcolm Blunt regarding the archives and records? And
Yeah, we actually had a few opportunities. It was nice. Bart Camp was pretty intent on setting up a little communique with myself and Malcolm, and it was a great honor getting to meet Malcolm. He's quite revered over there, and over here as well. He's just done some phenomenal work. I would, if you get a chance to go over there, I would highly recommend it. They're going to have next year's conference at the same venue, Ashhorn Hill. It's in a historic building in a really historic area. It's right near Stratford-on-Avon and a bunch of other really amazing places. It was just beautiful.
yeah, wasn't it like a castle almost?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a castle, but it was like an old mansion, like big, very large mansion on a beautiful property. Yeah, spectacular.
That's really cool. Maybe our friend Bart can convince the Triple B to come over, because it might take
a long flight, Joe. I don't know.
I know. Well, I'm saying it might take Bart to convince you, but yeah, I'm not sure if you found that picture yet, Rob.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get into the article,
I just found this. I figured we started off with a nice little amusing side note here. Yeah, normally, people say, "Oh yeah, you really look like this person. You look like that person." And here you go. What do you say? Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, my hair's getting there. It's
Yeah.
I doubt I have the voice though.
Right? I mean, yeah. Give it maybe next year about this time, your hair will be long enough, and man, you'll be twinning with this guy. That's Jarvis Cocker from the band Pulp from over in England.
I'm gonna get on that. Keep my hair growing out.
Yeah.
I like it. And yeah, so let's get into Mark's article here on Rob's favorite website, Kennedys and King. But just a little background on Mark. He's an attorney from Naples, Florida, graduate of Tulane and Florida State University College of Law for the past 20 years. Mark has been studying the JFK assassination related U.S. history. Mark's recent focus has been the JFK Records Collection Act and the federal law that guarantees the public disclosure of the history surrounding the JFK assassination. And Mark is dedicated to ensuring that the U.S. government complies with its remaining obligations under the JFK Records Act. And you are, of course, a co-author of Chokeholds, which is above one of my shoulders here.
See it above your left.
The left one, okay. And and it is signed by you, actually.
Cool.
Were you at Lancer last year?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was at the table and meeting. It was really, I think, Andrew, you remember what a cool experience we had was sitting with Bob Groden and his wife. That was good. That was a good memory, and it's a great comp. Probably go back this year. I try to go every year into Kappa too. They usually kind of combine them or at the same venue or something.
Okay. Well, we probably would have met or shook hands probably, because I know I was talking with Andrew and Matt Crumpton, but of course it is all a blur, so I can't recall it. But I hope to hopefully be there this year as well. So maybe we'll meet in person. But I did really enjoy your what was it, 11-page letter?
It was going to be shorter, but once I really dug into it and got, couldn't really help it being a lawyer and wanting to get it all on paper. Then when I was looking at it, I was like, I'm not going to take anything out. This needs to get out there, and there it is.
Well, Rob and I know how that goes for sure. We a couple weeks ago, we were like, let's try to keep our shows to like closer to an hour, and that lasted about 1 week. So
it's very hard to cram information into a finite space.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the way you started off the letter, because you congratulated her on the public hearings of April 1st and May 20th. And those were great hearings. We covered them intensely on this show and in our members only chat on Wednesday. And our whole perspective on it was, it's great that these hearings are happening, that it's in the press, that people are reporting on it. But there's a lot more stuff to do. And although some people and some deservingly so are taking some victory laps with some records releases, there's a lot more to do, and we're going to get into what exactly we can do, what the community can do together to kind of band together to get the Congress and the government to actually comply with the JFK Records Act. So
because it doesn't seem like, the whole, while it's a noble idea, but and the same thing happened back in 2017 when we were supposed to get the files and didn't, to bring, like, try to sue the government, bring lawsuits to the government where they just kind of are like Superman, bullets are falling off of the suit type of thing. Nothing seems to stick with these folks. And while, there may be some criticism out there of Luna and how she's handling this committee, I, for one, think that you need somebody like that. While she may not be the most knowledgeable person to the case, and she has admittedly said things publicly that are cringeworthy, if you want to be honest, but she's very tenacious and you can see her passion. And I think there's a lot of information when it comes to the JFK case to try to absorb if you haven't studied it for years, and she's had weeks or months to try to get in this mindset and have people steer her over this way. Oh, we need this, we need that, we need to make sure we do this and make sure we do that, and type of thing. But so kind of walk us through the what spurned you to write this letter to Luna. A lot of this may seem, people be like, "What, dude? Why are you wasting your time with this? Do you really think she's going to read it? Do you think anything's going to happen with this? What's the point?"
Right. I mean, the short answer to that is Judge Tunheim's testimony on May 20th. And while that may not have jumped off the page to most of the listeners, if maybe only a few of us, being a stickler for the JFK Records Act and the job that Judge Tunheim and his colleagues had to do in the early 90s in a very short period of time, he shared his experience in the difficulties and the problems that he sees and the work that still needs to be done. I mean, those are, in a nutshell, what he said. We can get into specific comments, but I didn't fully appreciate it on May 20th. I was thrilled that he testified, because what a better witness to talk about the review board, what its job was, and the difficulties he had. And I'm thinking this is something that really needs to be followed up on, because while it's great to have witnesses like Dr. Curtis, Dan Hardway, Doug Horn, Jefferson Morley's talked a lot about the CIA, Angleton and Joannides, but the records are the only thing that live forever. And if you're going to have forget having, an investigation of the case from in 2025 would be wonderful, be very difficult. Unlike the HSCA in the late 70s had living witnesses. You're talking 15 years after the assassination. You have JM Wave officers. You have all kinds of opportunities. You have Dan Hardway and Eddie Lopez investigating Oswald in Mexico City with witnesses. Okay, that was great. But here in 2025, if I'm looking at the stated mission of the task force, which is to undo, to eliminate government secrecy in and transparency and create transparency, you need to complete the JFK records collection. It's the only tragedy and assassination that the task force is investigating or trying to remove the veil from, so to speak, that has a statute behind it. It has a historical statute passed unanimously by Congress in 1992 that told the agencies through and the government offices, congressional oversight committees, and of course the review board, an independent agency. It said this is how you do it. It's not done yet. It's not done yet, and it's not close. So when I re-listened to Judge Tunheim's testimony a little bit in June and going into early July, there is so much gold there. The stuff that he shared was phenomenal because, as Andrew will say, he's a very measured man. He's a federal judge. He is going to carefully share his experience, but not really pulling any punches. He said they were waiting us out when we asked for specific records of interest to make sure that the records collection was complete on areas of interest that researchers had written the review board about. Hey, what about these records? Make sure they're in the collection. The review board would say, okay, we'll do that. Ask the CIA or whoever for it, and we'll get back to you, or they didn't get back to them at all. The two comments, and I'm sure I know Andrew, I would love for him to comment on this, but the one that really stuck with me was when he said, look, we reviewed what we could in a short amount of time. We saw the releases that came out this year. The review board never saw many of them, and many records were transferred to NARA at a later time. Those words "at a later time" are critical because it's a direct violation of the Records Collection Act for any record not to have been provided to the archives in early 1992, going into 93, as the review board was getting set up. Every record was supposed to go to NARA and the National Archives then. They were transferred to NARA or the National Archives at a later time. There has to be a darn good explanation for it. That has to be investigated. Was it created after 1998? Probably not. If it was, okay, go to the national. But if it existed as of October 1992, when the statute was passed, supposed to go to the archives for review board decisions on postponement and declassification. When Judge Tunheim said that didn't happen, that was a big red flag for me, and I'm glad he said it.
Now, Andrew, the last time we talked, I think we got into this. Just remind me real quick, when it comes to the CIA and documents, and when they're supposed to turn things over to the archives, is there a specific time frame, like where they kind of the CIA needs to do a document dump like every 5 years or every 10 years? Because obviously when you're talking about just the JFK assassination related records, that's a lot of files, a lot of paper, and that's not everything the CIA does and turns over to NARA. So unless they have these, a gazillion warehouses all over the world where papers are sitting in, are they supposed to basically do a document dump over to NARA every so often? I can't remember. I know.
Yeah, no. You know what, Rob? The act is totally specific on that. I think it's in section 5. It says, what is it, Mark? They have 300 days after the passage of the act, which was October 26, 1992. So within the year, by the end of 1993, all of the agencies, including the CIA, by law, would have already transferred or created RIF forms for all of the records pertaining to the assassination. Well, that never happened. I think that was a challenging time frame, to be quite honest, given the volume of records that we now know exist. I don't think anyone back then, except for maybe the CIA and the FBI, knew exactly what that volume would be. But was it 300 days, Mark?
Yeah, 300 days. It was the final deadline to make sure everything was transferred over to the National Archives. There was a shorter deadline at the passage of the act to identify and organize all their association records, create the RIF forms, and get ready. The 300 days was the final deadline. Yeah.
So 300 days after the act was signed in.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like,
300 days. 300 days after the act was signed into law in October '92.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when everything had to be transferred over. And
Got.
look, I think there wasn't any flexibility in the law, but in practice, there was clearly flexibility because, I mean, the CIA and other agencies were turning over documents right until the last minute in 1998. And then the metadata that we're finding now in some of the 2025 releases seems to suggest that a bunch of like the most recent releases in March 2025, it appears that they were received by NARA in the year 2000. A bunch of them were received in November 2000. Now, I'm trying to confirm whether the metadata that's in the NARA's in the NARA's records it does reflect that actual transmission date, but that's something that Congress should be looking at. Okay, and Mark has been hammering this in his letter to Representative Luna and to everyone that will listen. We don't have a complete, accurate, comprehensive, and unified catalog or index of assassination records or RIF numbers. There's no way that you can search the collection. Even according to senior archivists, the JFK records collection is a quote mess. Leading researchers and experts in the records all acknowledge the same thing. The records collection is a mess. There's no way to fully determine what's in there, what's not in there, what the status of any record precisely is in a sensible way. You can't search subjects or names in the collection. So there are big problems, and the Act requires at least for there to be a comprehensive unified index and catalog of records so we know what's in there. And I mean, for me, that's a starting point. You can't go anywhere unless you know what you're actually dealing with. And you know, the really tough thing is for the final determinations. And again, Mark has been thinking this through. We don't have a full collection of the ARRB's final agency orders with regard to the records that they did review and issue decisions on. All of those, as the two articles that I've written and that we talked about the last time I was on, you know, all of those final determinations, which are binding and enforceable legal orders, are stuffed somewhere away in the National Archives files. They're denying that they have full digital copies of them. We know, as a matter of fact, both from senior ARRB leaders and from the IT specialists, that they literally transferred the entire computer system, servers, disks, other storage, actual computers with their whole system over to the National Archives so they could maintain the collection directly from the ARRB and implement and enforce the ARB's orders. But yet NARA, formally in writing, has denied that they have digital copies of these records.
well, I
And
believe
they haven't even acknowledged that they have paper copies. And
Right.
you know, as a matter of fact, directly from ARRB documents, the ARRB literally attached physical copies of these legal orders to the associated records that they governed. And you know, NARA wasn't a passive repository for these records. They monitored very carefully the transmission and receipt of all of the assassination records from the ARRB, to the point where if a record was transferred to NARA without an ARRB final determination, they would literally get a hold of the ARRB and say, hey, you've sent us over a couple of records that don't have a final determination. Can you please complete these records by sending us the final determination? And I've got email to that effect from senior NARA staff to senior ARB staff, making sure that they had all the copies of the final determinations.
Yeah. And Mark, speak a little bit too on NARA's role in all this, the problems with these archivists, and a big problem that I've been saying, a lot of people are like, oh, we need to release the files and shit, but there's a lot of files that still aren't digitized and available online, which I think is an even bigger problem when you look at the volume of things. If you could, Mark, to speak a little bit to that, and because I know you brought that up to Luna in the letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, no one's drilled down better on the archivist duties under the JFK Act than Andrew. They're called ministerial duties. In a nutshell, the archivist function is to collect, organize, and publish in the Federal Register the JFK records collection. It does not have discretion to make declassification decisions. The only other duty it had under the JFK Records Act after the review board went out of office in September of 1998 was to periodically review records in the collection based on what? The decisions of the review board. Okay. So, and why that's important is, like I said, the archivist had no discretionary duty to continue the job of the review board if every record had been transferred to the National Archives within the 300 days with an identification aid stating what the agency said the reason they sought postponement for. So if the agency got their records together, organized them, transferred them to the archives, and then they identified a set of records that said, oh, we need this redacted or withheld for a bit of time, we're going to ask the review board to do that. They're going to state the reason why, the review board to make the decision, issue the order that Andrew mentioned, and then with that order, with the associated record, would go into the collection. And if the review board said this record can be released in 2006 or 2008 or even in 2017 at the end of the line, the archivist had a duty to follow those orders. And Andrew, no one's better to talk about what he's found so far than Andrew, but it's clearly not been done. And the reason that it's important to have all the record of the review board's work in those final orders, there should be over 27,000 of them per Judge Tunheim's testimony, is it creates the foundational record of what the review board saw, right? And then if you look at the number of records that are in the so-called collection now, whether they were transferred to the archives before the review board or after, how many are you talking about? 400,000, Andrew? I mean, the number of records.
Yeah, it's a staggering number.
Staggering. It's 100 times what the review board saw. So if the National Archives did respond to Andrew's FOIA request to show all the ARB's decisions that it should have, then it shows in black and white how many documents the review board did not see. So
yeah, that's a big point.
I mean, who is handling them? And okay, I get it. The review board only had 3 years of solid work, and Andrew can explain, the urgency and the rush at the end and August and September of 1998 because of the dump of documents that the agencies were doing at the 11th hour, maybe by with a purpose, right? To create some frenzy there at the end. But at the end of the day, collect, organize, publish. The problem that we're seeing, and it's not really speculation, it's the best educated guess, is that after the review board was waited out by the agencies, there was a period between 98 and 2017 where there was no periodic review. And whatever releases we saw then, was it based on a review board decision, or was it random? And is it everything that actually is at the archives? What we saw in 2025, is it everything that is at the archives? Was Trump's order fully carried out? We don't know unless there's a full catalog and index that the archives was supposed to maintain. So I kind of hopefully answered your question.
I just want to jump in before we move on, because like Mark and I are going to keep hammering on this. We have a law, right? Congress passed a law called the JFK Records Collection Act.
It's not an executive order. It was
No,
a
it's an
unanimous
absolute law, and it's Congress's law. They set up a process. They required oversight by the Senate and House oversight committees to make sure that their process that they mandated would be followed. And so, again, like, we're having a task force set of hearings. You would think that Congress's own law and the compliance with that law would be the first thing that they go to. Was the law complied with? What's the status of the process that we mandated by our law? What happened to Congress's records? You know, we don't even know whether all of Congress's records were released or not. And I mean, the president really, by a number of different laws, but particularly with the JFK Records Act, Section 9D1 says the president doesn't have authority over congressional records, only executive branch records. But we don't know whether there are still congressional records like the House Select Committee, the Church Committee, the Pike Committee. We don't know whether those records are still being withheld or not. And so Congress should be very interested in protecting their law and protecting their authority over their own congressional records. And so, you know, I hope that Representative Luna and the task force aren't done with the JFK case. I think there's at least one and probably two more hearings where they need to call the archivist in. They need to, like you suggested, Rob, they need to call some of the old archive staff that had decision-making authority during this critical time between 92 and 2017, find out what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Did you do periodic review? Why the hell not? How about giving us information about when these record dumps happened? Did any happen before 1992? Were all of those records given RIF numbers? What about post 98? What happened to those? Do they all have RIF numbers?
Archivist question, because when you think about it and put it into perspective, okay, when you're thinking about the staff available at the archives, you know, you think, okay, this is a government agency, a government entity. It should be well staffed. It should be organized.
With the amount of money we spend,
right?
Yeah.
And just on a microcosm level, if you kind of compare it to, say, the Weisberg archives, if you're familiar, well, that's mainly the work of one man, you know, and that's a lot of cataloging. It's alphabetical in order. Everything's organized. The metadata is there. You know, it's really well done as far as having a online digitized archive goes. And even to that point, like everything that's Bart has done with Malcolm's files, right? He's, you know, scanned.
Private citizens, or you
know?
I
mean, we're talking about the work of one man. So when you're thinking of the government agency, NARA, and the senior archivist, I don't know how many junior archivists there are. You know, I'm just trying to get a picture in my mind of actually how many people are working on this project. Because I mean, it's a lot, but it seems to fall so short of their mandate and fall short of
basic common organizational skills.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't mean to be flippant here. I mean, in the February 10th memo from the CIA proposed, you know, staffing and paying for archive staff to help sort through these assassination records.
Of this year?
People in the hen house.
Of this year, Andrew?
No, the 1992 memo.
92, okay, that memo. Yeah.
They said, hey, we can transfer them under the current classification back in 92, right, and we'll pay for and staff the positions to keep declassifying them.
Let's go dig Joannides up and put them in the archive.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if it's intentionally underfunded, because I've heard the AARB was underfunded with staffers. You know, they obviously were kind of waiting it out, sending documents in before the I guess the deadline was in April '94, or and
But
then
the deadline, I think it was in for all the files to be transferred was sometime in '93,
okay,
um,
okay,
before the ARB actually sat for its first hearing. And you know what? Listen, I mean, I have a huge amount of respect for a lot of the ARB staff. They functioned at an extremely high level. I look at the leadership there. Like David Marwell is a top notch guy. Judge Tunheim was an amazing leader at the ARRB. Jeremy Gunn, you know, he's had some criticism heaped on him. I think it's largely unjustified. That guy put together the whole legal apparatus for the ARRB in such an impressive way. I wish he was more helpful now. I will say that. But I admire the work that he did while he was senior counsel and executive director at the ARRB. They had so many amazing people there. They were under the gun in terms of the clock ticking from the minute they got into their office.
it
And
seems they never had a chance. They never really had a chance.
yeah,
That's what it
I
seems to
think
me.
certain agencies made sure of that.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
When they kind of sidetrack themselves at times too, you know, with trying to, because as enticing as it is to get this authority and to want to do yet a third investigation into the JFK death, you know, they kind of sidetrack themselves with, you know, getting mired in the medical evidence and re-interviewing all of these witnesses. I'm glad they did. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that, but you know, I don't know how much of that was time wasted when they could
Yeah,
have
I'm gonna differ with you on that. I think they're under oath depositions of the Bethesda and Parkland witnesses. When you go through that stuff with a fine tooth comb, that was the most. I personally think that was some of the most groundbreaking work that has happened in the last 63
I do
years.
too. I'm just not sure if it should have been part of their mandate.
If they didn't do it, we would not have it though.
Right.
And I do think they were pushing the boundaries of their mandate in order to do that. But and it was done in a pretty skilled way.
If they hadn't went that route, focusing on, you know, re-interviewing witnesses and just focus on the documents,
records. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Jim DiEugenio put it well the other night when we were talking to him. They were not staffed enough on investigators, not on particular issues like the autopsy, or they weren't staffed enough with investigators to find the records that were out there that were not sent to them.
They didn't have the Hardaways, the Lopez's.
Yeah, like right. So that was that if they were staffed properly, they would have had not only the Doug Horns who were digging into making sure the medical records were complete that they had, but also making sure that, you know, agencies had sent everything over, because they had researchers. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of researchers at the time educating them on what's out there that you may not have, and they didn't have the investigators to, you know, go grab those fully.
Yeah, that's right.
Huh. So let me ask you a hypothetical question, and this might sound silly. If we could find someone like Malcolm Blunt, and we had enough money between the four of us to put him up in a hotel room near the National Archives every day for months, and Xerox the hell out of everything there, would it even make a difference at this point? I mean, because you said it's such a mess. Isn't there 450 final determination notices found that you found, Andrew, out of 27,000? I think that's 2%.
That's right.
How long would it take this fictional Malcolm Blunt guy to
Well,
to,
well, look,
to schmooze the
really
archive.
stuff that's over there now that Malcolm put up. Most of that stuff is not online. It's not on Mary Farrell.
Yeah,
It's not available at the NARA website. And this is just a guy, just Xeroxing documents and stuffing them in a box and taking them back to the UK.
Shipping them back, spending a lot of money.
I mean, that's, to me, that's the giant problem, is we can't even comprehend the amount of documents that aren't available online or not digitized,
right,
as opposed to what they haven't released yet.
I mean, it shouldn't be up to us. Andrew, you made a good point the other day about an accounting office. It shouldn't be up to citizens to complete the collection catalog and index for them.
Of course, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a legal mandate under the act to do that. And
Right.
I don't know, where is it? You can see the 2017 releases, 2018 releases, 2021. They're all on different spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
And you can't search keywords in the spreadsheet. You can only search
Not anymore.
RIF numbers.
And when there's not a RIF number at all, when you pull up a record, you don't know when it went to the National Archives, who reviewed it, if the review board saw it, and it's just so many violations of the statute, just by opening a random record.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think I'm like going off of the rails here by saying I don't think that's not intentional. I think that is very intentional. We used to be able to keyword search, I think the 23 releases, Rob, which is how we found some of our finds in relation to the Martins. And now you can only search via RIF numbers. Why did that change?
It couldn't be more opaque,
They couldn't
So
make
lack of bodies,
no.
What at the beginning of the year, didn't they clean the house at the archives again, before these releases?
Yeah, I think when Trump came in,
they fired
there was
people and
some disgruntlement with some of the things that the archives had done under the previous administration.
Right. With the Mar-a-Lago documents, yeah.
Yeah.
But I heard this on one of your other shows. I forget which one. Is Marco Rubio technically the head archivist right now?
Acting, yeah.
He's the acting archivist. Because I guess that position, you'd have to get congressional or Senate approval. I'm not exactly sure.
It's one of the agency heads where you need to go through the Senate. Mark, what other position does he? So he's Secretary of State, acting archivist, but he's head of one of the intelligence. He's the national security advisor as well.
Yeah. So obviously he has a lot more things to worry about than JFK records and whether the archives is staffed properly.
It's an interesting balance, right, between being national security advisor and being the acting archivist with control over, the JFK records.
Yeah. So my question is, how do we put pressure on Luna or the current administration? Hi, Ruby. To put an archivist in there that is interested in going into the basement and finding the boxes that are shoved in the corner or that are mislabeled or misfiled and this and that. I feel like that's what as a community, we should be focused on now. And I feel like everyone's losing sight of this. Do you disagree? And how do we do it if you agree?
Well, I mean, having an archivist that's interested, it shouldn't have any particular. All I know is that how many records collections at the National Archives have a law behind it, like the JFK Records Collection Act. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Not the RFK, not the MLK,
none of them.
Not the Epstein files, not the UFO files.
And they had 25 years, and the ARB could only do what it could do in essentially 3 years of work. They had 25 years to gather the ARB's work, and then anything else the review board didn't see, and organize it so that people could research that. It's not an easy thing to finish, but the playbook is right there. And if they need to appoint a new civilian group, a new ARRB of people that aren't in Congress, that don't have anything else to do but to go in and finish the job that the first review board could do, that's an option. These oversight committees have jurisdiction over this collection way long after Representative Luna's task force is done.
It wouldn't even need to be a new law passed for them.
No, they don't have to amend the JFK Act. All they'd have to do is appropriate the funds for a new review board.
Right.
And here's the other thing. I think it was April 2016. Martha Murphy was a senior archivist. She was the archivist responsible for handling the JFK collection. She wrote a memo to all of the agencies in the spring of 2016 saying, hey, we've digitized the entire collection of records, and we are contacting you agency heads. So CIA, FBI, all the agency heads that had equities in these records. And she told them, we have the 2017 deadline for the release of all records. What are we going to do? We don't want to wait to the last minute in order to handle these records. Well, guys,
right.
We know that these final determinations were literally stapled to the front of every single assassination record. Why didn't they digitize these critical records when they were completing the digitization of the entire ARB collection? To me, they had to physically remove these legal orders from the assassination records before they digitized them. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe they lost them at that point. I don't know.
Everything's possible. Everything's possible to this thing.
Yeah, no, it is
now,
definitely.
Speaking of, some of these records that were getting released, I know technically, right? The Joannides documents that just came out, for instance, and I know there's some others that Representative Luna has been looking for or asking the CIA to release that are not technically considered part of the JFK Records Act. And I, as a longtime JFK researcher, have a little bit of a problem with records being released specifically to certain researchers who are seeking these documents out and not doing it properly and sending it through to NARA and having them available on their website for all to have and see. Do you guys see a problem with this trend?
Andrew, can you think of any exception in the JFK Records Act that would apply to the Joannides files if they're an assassination record? Why wouldn't they be part of the collection? I mean,
I mean, it's a pretty broad definition of what meets an assassination record.
I mean,
and I think everyone from Judge Tunheim to Representative Luna has said that the Joannides files are assassination records that should have been included in the records reviewed by the ARB. Listen, Rob, this isn't the first time that I've heard that specific individuals have received favored access or maybe even exclusive access to some of these recently, I don't know if you can even say released records, because if they haven't been publicly released, but they've been privately released, I mean, there's certainly nothing in the act that says, hey, let's give 2,400 FBI files to, someone from the Washington Post or the New York Times, or, they should be sent to NARA and properly added to the collection and released publicly. If individuals are getting special access, advanced access, or exclusive access to the records, that's not supported by the law. And I hopefully I hope that practice changes.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the workaround was, oh, well, these aren't technically JFK related records because they weren't initially reviewed by the ARB and considered as such. You know, there was little fleeting glimpses into things that got declassified by the ARB when it comes to Joannides, but you had little bits and pieces. This is what, you know, Morley's been putting together or trying to put together for the past, 25, 30 years with the, insinuating that, hey, there might be something here with this guy, but we need more information, right?
I'll just say it. I think it's a danger when one person is the focal point for access, information, and choosing who is heard. And there's a lot of potential for problems to emerge when one person has that much power. And I do think that there's an opportunity here for the task force to engage credible, reliable, and legitimate researchers. There's so many out in the research community that to put all of the eggs and all of the influence in one basket has a lot of potential problems. And I don't know whether we're seeing those potential problems or we're seeing possible advantage being taken if there are. And I don't have any details about records only going to one person. I've heard the same rumors as well. I don't know if there's credible information that's going to support that. But if there is, I think it should be laid on the table. I don't like to speculate, but I will say that I do see problems when power is consolidated in one person's hands. It opens things up for abuse.
I mean, look, I'm glad, that he got him. He's been asking for him for all these years, and I'm glad he finally got him, even if it's not the operational files, because I just don't think the CIA would ever turn those over for whatever reason. Of course, the reason can be speculated all day long as to why they either don't still have their Joannides operational files or won't turn over the Joannides operational files. Well, Joe, let's get into this a little bit. I know you got something here, because when it comes to the narrative of certain things like this, I think the truth can get lost in the noise and
in the headlines. Yes.
Yeah. And as both of you well know, look, I mean, this is a podcast, right? Probably the first ever technically podcast. I mean, we're 11 years old. We started back in 2014. It's been around a while. I've seen people come. I've seen people go. I'm still here. I put my numbers up against anybody out there. I'm not just tooting my own horn. It's you have to be dedicated to your craft and do this and stay consistent for a very long time to be taken seriously in this game. And when you see, and you guys know, I mean, you've been on a lot of these different podcasts, JFK related stuff, and this is a very niche subject. And when you see certain people elevated to a certain status in the community and given national attention, like, I can bring you guys on here all day long and you're big deals in the research community, but I don't see you guys on Fox News. I don't see you on with Tucker Carlson. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see you on 30, 40 different podcasts out there or major news outlets getting heard, and you should be. And we're glad you're here. But you understand what I'm saying when there's a dichotomy of difference between who's being heard in this community and who's not, and what that voice is saying, the one that's being heard the loudest. And so, Joe, let's get into this real quick and kind of parse through things, because we've all heard this narrative before, and we just wanted to clear some things up and dispel some maybe some misinformation, Andrew, right? Is that okay to say? Sorry, I've been consulting my lawyers. We get too deep into this. So Joe, take it away, friend, and let's kind of parse this out and see what the guys think about this, because it's that I don't see anybody else saying.
Right. Yeah. No, and I'm interested in getting their thoughts, and just want to preempt that by saying I heard about this on the segment on your other podcast, Rob, Quick Hits, with Doug Campbell of the Dallas Action podcast, of who
that one that's frowned upon in Canada. that podcast.
Not from Ontario.
No.
And I heard this a few weeks ago or a month ago, and like my kind of jaw dropped, because what I was under the impression of this whole time was that George Joannides brought out of retirement to kind of obstruct run interference for the HSCA. That whole narrative that we've been told, and maybe people are still telling it, is not only wrong, it's actually the opposite. And
you guys have heard this too, that Joannides was brought out of retirement to run interference. That's been the narrative for
a long time.
A while.
Yes,
a long time. So we're going to April 1978. The HSCA is already in session here. George Joannides is not working for the HSCA at this time. In fact, he had some medical problems, and the CIA picked a bunch of big cows, people that have been there a long time, to retire. And
just to reiterate, Joe, this is April 78. So almost halfway through 78. The HSCA is done by January of 79. So we're really talking about a 6 or 7 month window of the 3 years that the HSCA was active.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. And it says here, based on, and this is, and forgive me because I'm reading cursive here, so bear with me. Based on the current medical problem, don't put pressure on this person. It doesn't say person. Let him send it in himself when he gets ready. Don't worry about it. Now we have memorandum to the chief of the reinvestigation section. Subject, George Joannides. The above subject is one of the special RIP cases that is of interest to the Director of Security. On April 28, 78, subject was contacted telephonically to ascertain whether he had received the reinvestigation supplemental personnel history statement, PHS. I know there's so many different groups here. Subject further.
He doesn't mean rest in peace. Thank you for your service. We're retiring you.
Yeah.
It's what is it, Joe? Retirement in place, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of means that in a sense, but not exactly, right? Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think it says it shortly. Subject further stated that he has recently experienced open heart surgery, Joannides, and that he was working part-time. Subject admitted that the undersigned was lucky to, quote, catch him, because he, subject Joannides, was not supposed to be at work. So here he is after surgery. He's not supposed to be working. He's working. They caught him. Subject asserted very firmly that he understood the blah, blah, blah. Subject also stated that he would submit his PHS form in 2 weeks when he finished his business. Blah, blah, blah. So this is the document. This is one of the 15 special interest cases where which are supposed to be fully completed by May 1978. And I mean 78. And this is the 15 people we're trying to get to retire. Mr. Joannides was approached very, I'm not going to read the rest of this. And now we have a letter from Chief of the Career Management Staff of the CIA, Robert Brown Jr., subject George Joannides. Please find the attached file on Officer Joannides is a, quote, D careerist who has recently undergone major surgery. As a result of the surgery, Joannides does not believe he would be able for a PCS assignment overseas, and thus his comparative ranking and value to the operations Directorate would be limited, aka I'm sick, really can't be of much use. Joannides has a law degree and feels that he might make a solid contribution with his legal background. Shout out you both. And operational experience gained in some 20 years of DO service to either OGC or OLC. Mr. Joannides does believe that his health is sufficient to permit travel, TDY travel, either domestically or overseas, and would have no objection to such work. I am therefore forwarding his file and ask you review it for possible openings in your respective offices to determine whether there might be a suitable position for Mr. Joannides. Okay? So they're trying to find him a job. And pay attention to this date, guys. June 14th, 1978. It has been brought to the attention that the central cover staff that the above named individual is leaving the agency in January 1979. So 2 days before Joannides is tasked with HSCA, they're already saying about 7 months later, you're retiring in January 79. That's it. But we'll try to accommodate you to figure out something in the meantime. 2 days later, the above named subject, Joannides, was interviewed in Interrogation Research Division under the present policies and job assignment legislative council to the HSCA. Okay.
And real quick, Joe, I just want to point out that Joannides at this point is a level GS-16, which is at that time the highest paid level of government employment. And just to put that into perspective, that I believe he was a GS-15 in the mid 60s, and here we are 10 years later, and he's up to 16, and I don't know how long he's been at 16. But these are the type of people that the CIA was looking to retire. Right. Of the 15. You know, these are very highly paid guys that they're really not getting much out of anymore at this point, and would like to see them retire. Because not long after this, the government would change their entire pay scale and eliminate this level of achievement and pay. The 16 is gone. I believe now I think the highest you can go is 15. I think. Yeah, I'm just talking out of my ass though.
No, but you're right. I mean, listen. I mean, just like a business, they're trying to get rid of the older people that are making a lot of money. That, like Joannides, who just went through open heart surgery, is not contributing much anymore, right? So the House Committee, as you mentioned, Rob, established in September 76, and Joannides doesn't join until June 78, almost 7 months before it ends. So he's really joining in at the very end. He wasn't put in there to obstruct it from the very beginning. And of course, you could make the argument that, you know, they were making their final reports at this time, but, you know, a lot of the interviews had already been done, right?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong too. The CIA had a pretty good hold of what it was letting the HSCA see anyway. As far as I remember, when it comes to the House Select Committee on Assassinations interworkings with the CIA, that it was like, okay, the HSCA could request documents, right? And they would make them available to the HSCA investigators, who would have to come to them, be presented with these documents and say, okay, you can read them and you can take some notes, but you can't photocopy them and you can't take them out of this room, type of thing.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty decent chokehold, if you will, CIA had on their own documents when it came to the HSCA. So to insinuate that, oh, we need to bring in, you know, George Joannides to just to make sure that you know, these sensitive documents aren't turned over to the HSCA is
yeah. And Yeah, and I'm not saying that George Joannides didn't do some shady stuff and obstruct the HSCA towards the end. I think any liaison with from the CIA would have done almost exactly the same. He just happened to have a perfect background uh, and and wanting to extend his career a few more months that they found this
Well,
for him.
Joe, let's be clear. I mean, really, what you're saying is that the narrative, and just strictly that the narrative that he was brought out of retirement based on these documents showing that he was maybe off on disability after his heart attack, but he was still employed by the CIA, but he wasn't on duty. He was off on medical leave, maybe. But when he was able to work again, that he was never removed from the CIA. He was always active as an employee with the CIA right through until he retired in 1979. Right? What you're saying is that narrative is not consistent with the records that you found. Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
what
So-
you're not saying is that George Joannides didn't frustrate the work of Eddie Lopez and Dan Hardaway and the HSCA. You're not saying that he didn't not disclose his activities in the Central Intelligence Agency with relations with the DRE. You're
Right.
not saying
As
like
Blakey
all
said.
of the really nefarious stuff that is being alleged against him. You're only saying that he wasn't brought out of retirement, and that narrative is not correct if the records that we're looking at are accurate.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's what I'm saying. And
Curious thing what Scott Breckenridge was doing, as far as determining what documents that he was going to let the HSCA guys see, and did they even ask Joannides anything about his personal service to the CIA as it pertains to the case, or were they just dealing with this guy as an intermediary type? Did they even have an inkling of Joannides' true involvement at the time?
It kind of makes me chuckle because this seems to be almost like standard operating procedure. You bring the people in who know their stuff about the issues that they're now going to be handling. I mean, that Ruben Efron guy, I don't know whether we talked about it in our last show, but he was intercepting Oswald's mail back in the late 50s and early 60s as part of HD Lingual. So he was a CIA officer in like from I think the 40s right through until the 70s, intercepting Oswald's mail. And he was brought onto the Warren Commission, to be the Russian interpreter for Marina Oswald. I don't see anything in the record where he said, "Oh, Your Honor, Justice Warren, just as a matter of disclosure, I work for the CIA, and in fact, I was in charge of intercepting Oswald's mail. If that's not too much of a conflict, I'm happy to offer my Russian interpretive services for Marina Oswald."
But nobody asked him either. That's the thing.
I imagine Alan Dulles sitting there, giving him a little wink, So I don't know. Like, I mean, for me, the Joannides story is still it's still pretty interesting, but it's not the end all be all of the assassination case. It doesn't touch on Dallas in a lot of ways. It touches on the cover up. It touches on sheep dipping Oswald. And certainly it looks like some of the story that's being promoted over the last few years about Joannides was not consistent with the records that we're now seeing.
Yeah, and these files are basically saying, look, the CIA internally wanted him to retire. They wanted him to retire, but he didn't want to yet. and he basically, after his heart attack, decided, hey, I'm still good. I'll fly wherever you want me to. I can still do this kind of thing. And they were like,
I hate to say it. I mean, I don't trust like these records. I'm sure they came from the CIA. Do I trust the records to say exactly what was happening? As a word of God? No, I don't.
Of course.
Just like I won't trust the Russian records when they come out either.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you have to really be skeptical and highly critical of all of these records. I don't know, Mark. Does that make sense to you? What I've just said?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing about whether he retired or not. I mean, what I know about Joannides is he became a problem for the HSCA, particularly Dan Hardway and Eddie Lopez. Dan talked about it on May 20th, right? When they were getting into their deep dive of Mexico City, he made it almost impossible. He changed the rules on how to get CIA records, and they never disclosed his operational activities in 63. He was promoted to a very high level position in JMWave in the summer of 63, was running the DRE in New Orleans when Oswald was there, and clearly was brought in by the CIA, retired or not. Apparently it was not, to cover up as much as possible their activities with Oswald in late 63. It stops really after New Orleans. It doesn't. It gets into the possible FPCC operation in Mexico City if Oswald was even there engaging in that. We know they use his name, image, and likeness there as an imposter. So there's gets really into why he was at the HSCA, whether he was retired or not. And I think the record's pretty clear now that he was there to make it impossible for them to get the things that Jeff Morley and Dan Hardway have now talked about in the task force.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to finish one last thing I have here. Just going to his Medal of Merit in 1981, his Honor and Merit Awards, and they go through his whole career, and they talk about he was brought from Greece, brought back from Greece, put back into Greece, engaged in Soviet and Cuban operations in 64. 65, back into Athens until 1969, Vietnam until in 1972, Chief of Covert Operations Staff, Western Hemisphere, 70s, 74, you go to 75, Rob, you said promotion to GS-16, and then in January 76, selected to head East Asia's Division Operations Evaluation and Management Staff. And, only 6 months later, 2 years later, I'm sorry. And then in June 78, he continued this assignment until June 78. He was selected to assist the agency's senior coordinator for the HSCA. So, my only point here is that the Joannides thing, I think, is extremely interesting, intriguing, but it doesn't end there. And we as researchers shouldn't be satisfied with what we've got with just these Joannides files. We should be demanding the operational files. We should be, most importantly, as I'm sure you two would agree, getting Luna and Congress and Trump to comply with the JFK Records Act. And I'm concerned, as I think you two are, and I know Rob is, that this is distracting. And I think these KGB files that are going to come out in the fall are also distracting. They have nothing to do with the JFK Records Act.
Not to mention, if the Republicans lose the House after this November, do we lose Luna too?
Yeah, you're going to have Crockett heading this committee. So
it's going to be a nightmare.
We have a very small window here to make progress. Right. And that's what your article, Mark, I think really honed in on, is we can't take our victory laps. We can't, lose focus on what the main issue is. And I think that is figuring out what the hell is up with the archives, finding those boxes in the bottom corners of the basement, finding those last 2 years of 77, 78 ARB, or what's the word? It's like annual summaries. Is that right, Rob? Andrew?
What?
Yeah, yeah. Those annual reports, they only exist for 95 and 96.
And 96 is
we're out
omitted
of luck with that.
And 96 one omitted the appendix, right? So it's not even complete. So
Yeah,
you really have
that's a end of the line quest for those.
Right. So I think and when people ask me what can we do right now in late August of 2025 to put pressure on Luna or this administration or Congress or the archives, what can we do to get people to comply with this act and to get the documents out there without getting distracted by, something like Joannides as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, listen, this is exactly the problem. I think this has always been the problem with the JFK case. They pull a rabbit out of the hat in terms of letting like a really exciting record released, and everyone focuses on that one record for a period of time, and then it dies down. The whole JFK case kind of goes quiet, and then there's a little bit of rumbling, so they pull another specific record about something that really doesn't have anything directly to do with the actual assassination. You'll see everything's on Oswald. Nothing is really on what happened in Dallas. And I mean, they're keeping our eye off the ball here. So
Right.
your viewers and your listeners, it sounds like a Jerry Lewis telethon, but write an email to Representative Luna's office and say, hey, you have the JFK Records Act. Yeah, require the archivist to account for all of the records, not this record over here or that record over here. Let's make sure that the archivist and the agencies have complied with the law that you passed back in 1992. Call them in, call the CIA in, call the archivist in, and make sure that they've complied with the act to the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we don't really have an archivist right now, a head archivist, do we? I mean, what is Luna going to call in Rubio? That's not really.
Well, Secretary Rubio, he can either show up and answer questions himself, and I'm sure, like, he's a talented guy. They can require answers after a hearing. He's going to have to commit to providing information. They can call him back to the oversight committee if the task force ceases its work. Or Secretary Rubio can delegate that, or have someone with him during the hearing also answer questions. Have a past archivist who is actually responsible for the handling of the records with detailed on-hand knowledge about how the practices went with the transfer of records, the cataloging of these records as they came from the FBI and the CIA and the other agencies. There's so much work that's been left undone. And I do think, the media is just falling in lockstep with this whole Joannides story. You're only seeing one person in the media talking about virtually one subject for the last 2.5 months. And since April.
Mm-hmm. So, or the FBI files, the 2,400 JFK FBI files that were found that I think were Carlos Marcello files.
Sorry to interrupt, but in thinking like big picture, if I'm a listener or or any of us, or just someone who wants to know, I mean, a good question to Luna and to Rubio or anybody else anyone can email is how do I know and verify that everything that's been received from agencies, since 1992, whether it was reviewed by the review board or not, is now fully released after the 2025 release. Okay, how do I know and verify that? That gets to the heart of the full catalog and index. So if they ask that question, like, okay, you're telling me after Trump's order, after these 80,000 pages this year, is that everything? How do I know and verify that? Is there anything still left at the National Archives? Even throw in the HSCA sequestered collection as an example, which I put in my letter to Representative Luna. You know, the CIA suggested they transferred it over before the passage of the Records Review Act. Was that reviewed by the board? And if not, what's the status? Why are you Congress? These are your records. Are you dedicated to the full release of your own records? And who's going to handle that? How do I verify that that's going to be done?
How do you verify it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really that's a drill down question. And you know what? It may not be as sexy as like heart attack guns or whatever was the last distraction of files, but that's what we need to do. We need to demand verifiable proof that the records have been transferred, properly reviewed under the standards of the Act, and released.
Yep.
Agreed.
And cataloged. You know, how come I can't search for this stuff? Right.
Yeah.
I think that's just a basic function of some code that they can just do on the website to make things searchable. I mean, they've done it before, and there's no reason that they couldn't do it again, at least sometime in the future. But
it seems like they're doing everything possible to make it as hard as possible to search for files. Yeah. I mean, Andrew, you went to the archives before Lancer last year. You had to, pre-book, right? You have to tell them what you were looking for, and what you found, you actually kind of found by accident. That was kind of misfiled, right?
It seems that way. Yeah, that's for sure. And, Mark and I have, over the last few weeks, we've been drilling down on a certain period of files because, we haven't really talked about this. What we found in that February 10, 1992 memo, it was just so obvious that, in December of 1991, Oliver Stone's JFK is released. And you can see an almost immediate reaction at the CIA going, holy shit, like that last screen is going to kill us. With
we got to get ahead of this.
The HSCA records not being released until 2029. We got to figure out what to do. And so, that 23-page memo that was ordered by the Director of Central Intelligence to create a strategy, not just a strategy, but to inventory all of the records that they're concerned about, especially the HSCA sequestered records, inventory those and create a strategy how we can keep them classified. And the memo really details that. But then we're also learning that there were a whole bunch of other memos in that same time frame that deal with other issues. And I'm just waiting, to discover like a memo that basically has a media strategy on how to deal specifically with Oliver Stone's film, because it's pretty clear that the media was on board with even before the film was released to disparaging the film. And then Gerald Posner came out with his book in 93. And it was just a full court press against what the ARB was going to do. And the fact that the Act, 8 months later after this memo was created, comes out with a carve-out for records that are to be transferred before the passage of the Act, you're just sitting here going, how much of this was just all planned out in detail?
Yeah. And Mark, just want to read a little bit from your recommendations here on your article, and I can agree more, because I think we do need to, of course, conduct another hearing, but with past and present senior officials of the CIA and National Archives regarding the handling of the sequestered information collection of HSCA assassination records. If we can get these archives people in front, under oath, in front of Congress, that would go a long way. And I know they've kind of been like cycling through archivists and assistant archivists and whatever, but the National Archives needs to comply with the JFK Act. You don't need to pass another law. You just need to tell Luna and probably Comer, because she doesn't really have final subpoena power, really, right? You need Comer to really give the heavy hitting subpoenas.
Yeah, I mean, the first question I'd ask, and it shouldn't have to be up to any of us to do a FOIA request for this, is, Mr. or Miss Archivist, are you willing to provide a receipt, a transmission receipt of every assassination record you received from an agency or office starting as of October 26, 1992 to present? Are you willing to index and catalog those? And are you willing to release the review board's final determinations showing what they reviewed and put that out there for in an organized fashion? I mean, it's what I would ask to start.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you both this. Do you think that the 1997 and the 1998 ARB kind of annual summaries, right? One could argue, and one won't have to argue hard, the most important of those annual summaries, do they still exist? And do you
They
think
never
that-
issued them. They look.
Wait, what do you mean they never issued them? Do you mean
So? Under Section 9, 9 of the Act, the ARRB was legally required to create an annual report. They were supposed to end their operation in October of, I think, 1996. They got 2 extensions that ended their operations in September of 1998. Okay. None of the extensions kind of dismissed their obligation and their legal duty to file an annual report. But there was an agreement with Congress that they would give Congress updates. But those updates, I don't think, included providing full copies of the final determinations. Okay. So how it's being explained to me is that they were so under the gun in 97 and 98, just completing their essential task, which was to review the records and issue final decisions on those records, that they probably didn't. No, I know they didn't issue annual reports in 97 and 98. And like you said, Joe, in 1996, their annual report omitted an appendix with all the final determinations. So that is that I've ended my search for those annual reports because I've been told that 97 and 98 do not exist. And I know, as a matter of fact, that the 96 annual report did not have an appendix containing all final determinations, even though they were required under the Act to include such an appendix. Okay. I'm not really okay with that, but I understand why it happened. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I just didn't realize that they just didn't even go through the effort to doing it, because you could see the pattern, right? They're on track in 95, 96. They're kind of on track. They leave out the appendix. 97, 98. They're completely off track.
I scoured all of the internal emails of the ARRB to see if there was even a discussion at a high level to say, okay, we're not going to do an annual report for 97 and 98. And I searched for hours through hundreds of thousands of email, and I couldn't find even a discussion where that happened. It may exist somewhere. I might have missed it, but I was pretty thorough in reviewing the whole database of ARRB email. I did find some really interesting stuff in the email messages from various researchers and internal between between the members of the staff at the ARRB, but I didn't find any explanation and I asked both Judge Tunheim and Jeremy Gunn. It's 30 years ago. I go, was there a policy decision or did the board approve? And there was no recollection of that specific question, but I can say for 95 and 96, the annual reports were really big productions for the board because they were like 60, 70 pages long for both of those years. They went into fascinating detail about the work of the ARB, the problems, all the appeals from the FBI. Like I can send you copies of those annual reports for the 2 years. They're worth reading because you can see what they were dealing with.
You found them in Connecticut, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Nice
at Quinnipiac Law Library.
Yeah, I'll go up there, search for the other two. I'm available.
It's a chaotic quest, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They just don't exist.
We never see Joe again.
Yeah, right. I'll be lost in the Quinnipiac archives. But no, I really think you both are doing God's work. And I'm really personally, very encouraged and also discouraged at the same time. And I don't really know where to go from here, if I'm being really blunt. But I think Mark's article lays out a really good next step forward. And that's why we want to have you both on, because it's really important. And it's the law. We just have to tell people to follow the law. But if people are busy taking victory laps for whatever reason, personal reasons they have for doing it, that's not going to happen. So I just want to keep the pressure on. I wanted to tell our audience and educate them on this and to write. So would you say, because I heard you say, write your congressman. So for example, I'm in Connecticut, an extremely liberal state. It would do no good. So should I just write Luna instead? Because writing, say, Senator Chris Murphy, who's like horrible, would be almost worthless. So how would you suggest the people that listen to this episode kind of go about
There are a lot of active representatives on the task force. Representative Burleson, he wrote a really strong article in the Daily Signal, literally calling for a full investigation into the assassination. That hasn't happened in a long time. So CC Representative Burleson, Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee, he's asked some excellent questions during the task force hearings. He appeared on the Sean Ryan show, and this was one of the big issues that they talked about, the Kennedy assassination, on the Sean Ryan show. And Representative Burchett I've communicated directly with Representative Burchett. I spent an hour in his office in Washington, D.C. last November. He was very welcoming and interested, especially in respect to the congressional records that were being withheld. He understood that issue completely. I've continued to communicate with his office. So, send it to your local representative. Definitely send any correspondence to Representative Luna, and then also include some of the other representatives on the task force. Representative Crane, again, you can tell he's very interested in this. He cares about it, and he's been one of the few members on the task force to stay right to the end of almost every hearing. He's there, he's present, he's asking good questions. So I mean, those four representatives, I would CC them all on any correspondence, and I don't know. You can email the president as well. The more the president hears about it, I think a lot of these representatives need to know that they've done a pretty good job to date on this just by holding these hearings. And Paul Blow, he's done a recent survey of the research community to see how people have responded to the congressional task force.
I participated in it.
Oh, did you? Good, good. You know what? The results were pretty impressive. I mean, at least like I'm not partisan in this. I'm Canadian, so you know what? I just want the United States to succeed. I want my country to succeed. But you know, the Republicans on the task force have gotten pretty high marks from the research community by, like, it's not perfect and no one says it's perfect, but you know, they've done a pretty good job just by having these hearings.
Yeah, 100%. Even from like maybe liberal researchers, and to your point, I don't look at this as a bipartisan issue. It really isn't. It shouldn't have been. Shouldn't be. It wasn't when the JFK Records Act was voted into law, and it shouldn't be now. And
you know what? Whether you love Trump or hate Trump, whatever, he's moved the dial on this, and so is Representative Luna.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel positive towards there being a significant shift in the release of records. There's still a lot of work to do, and they have an act of Congress that's backing it up and demanding attention.
Yeah, I mean, the silly way, not really silly, but is just say like, hey, you know, your predecessors in '92, in response to a movie, unanimously passed a groundbreaking and historical statute, spent a lot of money doing it. The review board spent millions and millions of dollars to carry out that mandate. And I'm hearing now that the job's not done and it's not close to being done. So what's up with that? Like, you know, call the archivist in, get a full record, a full catalog of everything that they've received, and what's still at the archives that is it needs to be still released. Is everything that's coming out from 2017 to 2025, albeit late, is that everything? Well, how do I verify that? Just finish the job. I mean, it's not that. It's a pretty simple ask.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, there's still things from the 90s that were declassified that still aren't digitized and online yet.
Yeah.
You know, to that end, they definitely need to do their job, and we need to keep our foot on the gas pedal in this narrow window that we have, and just keep plowing away and do what we can do, and just, you know, like Socrates said, something is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
And
you know what, guys? I really appreciate you having us on to talk about this.
Yeah.
I think it sadly has not received the kind of attention that you guys have just given it. I think it's a big issue and it should be front and center. And we really appreciate your understanding of the importance of this.
we love nerding out with you guys and getting into the weeds and all this, because this is something that a lot of, you know, they'd rather you know, read how James Files was on the grassy knoll type of thing, and not even pay attention to any of this. But you know, if you're a serious JFK researcher and you're really interested in getting the documents, and because I think, you know, that through the documents, they may not ever come right out and tell us the truth in plain sight, but I've always been a fan of trying to piece together some documents that support each other in ways that they didn't anticipate, but that we can figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that is where the major breakthroughs are going to come, as far as, you know, moving forward with all this.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show, and welcome the first time, Mark.
Yeah.
And
enjoyed
it. And we'd love to have you back sometime in the near future, and see if we've gotten anywhere, if anything happens. You know, there's always an October, November surprise when it comes to the JFK research community.
Right around the corner.
Mark my words, KGB files. That's going to be it.
Yeah. Or some more Joannides files that maybe somebody was sitting on. We'll see. What do you never know. And again, these guys are co-authors of the book JFK Chokeholds, which we'll put a link to down here. Support their work. It's a great book. And again, you can find Mark's articles and Andrew's over at kennedysandking.com. We'll link those two below in the description. And once again, guys, thank you so much for coming on the Lone Gunman podcast and talking about this. We greatly appreciate it and all of your hard work. And thank you guys so much for coming on.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Yeah, keep it up, please. We need it.
And for Joe Borelli, this is Rob Clark. And folks, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.